We'll give it another minute and then we'll jump in. I admit that this could have taken different forms if I had done this presentation in October or in December and now. So I'm definitely presenting on what is actually on my mind and what we're working on right now. So this will hopefully be relevant, and I'm very curious for your feedback on how we can move some of the conversations forward, especially moving into next year. Erica, I see that you will be our natural science representative on this call, so um, I will be definitely starting off with a conversation about the sciences and see how we can bring us in to what is actually happening in the sciences. I think because the sciences are the largest contingent on campus. I think this is where I've always wondered how we can create a dialogue from the humanities and social sciences with the natural sciences even more than exists now. So actually, that's my preamble. So maybe I'll just start. All right. So I'm speaking today not only as a dean, but also as a professor of music, and having started my career here as an assistant professor in 2008, and really just working my way, not just up in the ranks, but also just across the university, trying to forge connections across departments. In music, we have a very unique situation in the sense that while we may seem like on the side of campus, maybe nobody has been to our department, but we have a lot of science students in our classes, and especially in our performance ensembles. And in that way, even as chair of music, I viewed the department more as a service department in the sense that we were offering opportunities for students that were really in very set um, uh, uh, courses, offering opportunities for expression, to be able to participate in an artistic way that maybe didn't necessarily fit into perhaps a major or a minor. This is why a lot of our ensembles are only 1 credit. A lot of times students take our ensembles without credit, a repeat participation, and it's really an opportunity for students to feel connected and to really experience friendship in a different way than you would, for instance, in another class. Performance is actually a very small part of what the music department does, and the history of the music department could only be understood if you can imagine us on the 6th floor of the Cathedral of Learning, which is actually how it started a long time ago. And that could probably be explained by the fact that the humanities have always been smaller, a smaller contingent here at the university. And this was also just more of a theoretical exercise. So a lot of musicology back in the 70s was not so much professional practice as more analysis and historical approaches to the study of music. This has gradually changed, and now we see much more emphasis on the performance side. And this is why I'm trying to see how we can actually bridge this gap as we move forward. So where I'm jumping into this conversation is actually with the gen eds. The gen eds have been a top priority for the school the past 2 years. We've been talking about them. We talk about them in council. And one of the most interesting things that actually started to make me think a little bit more critically about the gen eds had to do with the cross-cultural gen ed. A few months ago, when we were analyzing the language related to the cross-cultural gen ed, and one of the things that I noticed in terms of participation with that gen ed conversation with the chairs is that this was primarily in the humanities, more in, a little bit in the social sciences, but the natural sciences weren't part of that conversation. And I wasn't really thinking too much about that at that time, other than I did hear for the first time that certain departments feel like they own a certain gen ed, or they have more to say about a certain gen ed than another. And then it again made me start to think about, well, what is this actual general education project that we are all involved in? So I started counting some classes, and one of the things that I started with was the natural science gen ed. And this is the breakdown of classes and representation of the departments. And we have nothing unusual here. We have bioscience, we have chemistry, geology, neuroscience, physics, astronomy, psychology. These are the ones that we would expect to be there. Now, let's just kind of unpack that just a little bit, right? So we have one gen ed and we have one part of the university that's represented with that gen ed. The other parts of the university are not. So when we move further, we can actually see that the natural sciences do participate in certain gen eds, and we have by 3.3%, that's actually 2 classes. So if you're thinking of 100 or approximately a little bit less than 100 courses per gen ed. We're not talking about a lot of classes, but we have algebra represented by the natural sciences. Cross-cultural, they do have 1 or 2 classes. Diversity, which is very nice to see. This is a growing contingent for the natural sciences, quantitative and social sciences. And where I want to focus a lot of the conversation today is this. So when you look at the other gen eds that we have, we actually do not see the natural sciences in any of these gen eds. And I've been thinking a long time about this. Is it structural? Is it philosophical? Is it the approach that we have on campus? And I'd like to really focus some of the conversation that we're going to have today on this particular slide. So as I move, I've got 3 more slides, as we sort of set up the conversation today. But I thought this was really interesting, especially if we're looking at the arts. I did look at physics, for instance. They have, a class on sound, which is very much in line with the arts. It's very much in line with the creative work. I know that the physics and the music department, for instance, collaborate. They bring in musicians into their labs, and they do experiments with music, especially electronic music. And so this was really an interesting thing. And when I was looking at which departments have all the gen eds, one of the things that I was actually very surprised is that it's the history of the philosophy of, which HPS? If anyone can just remind me what the actual name of that department is.
The history and philosophy of sciences.
History, philosophy of science. And I thought that was really interesting too, that here we have one department that actually goes across all of the gen eds, and the others have their niches in a way. So moving forward, I just wanted to also just break down the arts for us and just see who's participating in the arts. We have music, you have HAA, you have, film studies. These are ones that you would anticipate. A lot of the languages actually participate in the arts gen ed. Many of the languages I noticed, French, German, Russian, Slavic, have film studies courses or a culture course that engages with this. Africana Studies also does as well. And then moving towards the creative gen ed, this is also where we see a lot of representation from the languages. We have more on the theater side here. Again, we have music, English appears everywhere, also across the board. And then we have more studio arts with the creative gen ed. So kind of thinking about, and not really wanting to turn this into a music history lesson, but when you're really thinking about the arts and what actually moves the arts in one way or another, arts don't actually exist in a vacuum. They are always engaging with humanist thought. They're always engaging with technological advancements. And so here, this is just a great picture. You could see again the gramophone, where you have the tremendous shift in how we perceive the arts when we can actually play back and we can capture sounds for the first time. And this, again, does not come from musicians. Musicians don't necessarily create the technology that actually allows a lot of this to come through. And here you have, again, the synergy between innovators, engineers, and moving across the various scientific disciplines. This is also at the time that the piano becomes the instrument that has such a tremendous mechanism to it that can dampen sounds, that can make sounds louder. This is all part of the types of technological innovations that are being borrowed from different industries and being brought into, for instance, the music realm and vice versa. And so this conversation, I think, is a really pivotal time for us to consider what we're actually doing here on campus after the pandemic, because this is really where all of the arts have changed so dramatically. And they didn't, again, change in a vacuum. All of the technology that started to develop as a must, right? So these Zoom calls that we're on, I mean, they didn't develop just because that's what they were going to be developing. I mean, nobody would have thought even 10 years ago that we would be having these video conferences and this would be a type of online learning environment that was. What happened with the online learning environment, I feel, especially at Pitt, we were heading a certain way where we were really starting to engage with technology in different ways. And then that push to bring us back to campus actually, I feel, broke a certain type of trajectory, a type of synergy that would have even brought us further had we been in person and using all of this technology that was already in play. And I had been pushing for a laptop orchestra, for instance, in the music department. I thought that was a way that we're starting to see what happened in the music fields. So for instance, we couldn't do one-on-one piano lessons during the pandemic. Students started to learn and engage with music in different ways. Everybody started to agree upon certain apps, to engage with their computers in a certain way and to create arts through these technological realms. And speaking to our students today, it would actually be very, very difficult to even decouple technology from the arts, right? Everybody has, again, not just computer-based, internet-based engagement with music or with the arts, but the fact even how they're tuning their instruments, right? So they're not actually tuning through that technique. They're actually using a tuner, right? Now, this was already here before the pandemic, but these are things that we want to consider as we're talking about the synergy. And again, this picture is of those apps where everybody was coming together, recording, and then creating an orchestra online, which people don't do anymore as much as they did during the pandemic. But this is, again, just another example of how we're in this very pivotal time where I think technology is offering a beautiful synergy for the arts. So that's what I wanted to present today. And I wanted to open this up and just see where we might be at Pitt in terms of this type of conversation and bringing the humanities even closer with the social sciences bringing them closer into the natural sciences and vice versa. And I know that there are some logistic parameters to these issues when it comes to Pitt, when it comes to setting curricula, but maybe we could brainstorm a few ideas and start looking forward, to some new ways of engaging on campus moving into next year. So I'll stop sharing and see how we can talk about this. All right, so I see that a few more people have joined. So why don't we actually go around the room and just see who's in the room and see, where this conversation is landing. And Erica, I already introduced you, so why don't you just start? Just give us your department and your role there.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Erica. I'm a teaching associate professor in biological sciences and also an assistant dean of undergraduate studies. And I will pass the mic to Leanne.
Leanne, if you
All right, that was clunky. Okay. I was actually on Jane's picture trying to unmute her. So I'm Leanne Sukas. I'm in the history department, and I'm also an assistant dean in arts and sciences. And I will pass over to Jane.
Hello, I'm Jane Caldwell. I'm from the economics department. I'm a teaching professor and director of undergraduate studies.
Okay, great.
Pass to Russell, I guess.
Hello, everyone. I work here in the undergraduate studies dean's office, and I work with Adriana closely. So I'll pass over to Amani.
Hi, I'm Anya. I am a teaching professor in linguistics and director of undergraduate studies.
Okay. Rosemary? Oh, sorry, I think.
Yeah, we can't hear.
Oh, sorry, you're unmuted or unmuted?
I think the
Right,
the
we'll
problem
come
is
back.
if you, maybe. Go ahead again. Now, if you have those earplugs or something, they usually don't work so well with.
All right, well, we see Drew with earplugs, so let's turn to Drew.
Yeah.
Then Sudi.
Thank you, Adriana. I'm so disappointed, Leanne. I thought you would be the one who popcorned me. Leanne and I always sit beside one another at meetings and stuff. We're like a meeting couple, right? And now she's gonna cough to death. Have you ever seen anyone going to cardiac arrest on a Zoom? And no, I don't want that to happen. Drink. Okay. Sorry, I'm delirious. Too many meetings today already. My name is Drew Armstrong. I'm an associate professor in the Department of History of Art and Architecture and the director of the Architectural Studies program. And Jeff.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jeff Aziz from the English department, and I'm also one of the Dietrich School Assistant Deans and the Academic Integrity Dean for the undergraduate division. And I am also, I think, the only literature professor to have taught a course with a lab, an anatomy lab. So this question of interdisciplinarity and how you create it is very close to my heart, too, and looking forward to talking about it.
All right, great to hear about that one. Okay, Marcy?
Hi, I'm Marcy. I'm a teaching associate professor in music. And we've been, I kind of have a hand in a lot of our creative classes, which, as Adriana says, have a lot more technology. I'm also married to an electrical engineer who makes some guitar pedals. And I think about kind of that stuff too. Can I popcorn to Tom?
Thanks, Marcy. I'm Tom Dine, a teaching assistant professor in the Slavic department, where I'm also the Russian major undergraduate advisor. And I'll popcorn to Lilina.
Thanks, Tom. So I'm Ljiljana Đurašković. I'm from Slavic department, teaching professor in Slavic department, and also one of the assistant deans for undergraduate studies. I'm really very happy to be here today for this because I am in the process of developing a course that would that should connect science and humanity. But we will see. It's in the process, so I don't want to talk about that now.
Oh, great. Well, it's being recorded, but don't worry about it.
Thanks.
All right, and then have we heard from Jennifer? I don't know if she hears us. And then Rosemary, are you good with your audio?
Let me try now. Can you hear me?
Okay, perfect. Okay, great.
So sorry. I'm Rosemary Papo. I'm an assistant dean on the grad studies end. So I'm lurking, but this is the transition here. So I also teach undergrad courses in mineralogy and a gen ed course in geology as well. So I'm interested in that intersection.
Perfect. Yeah. Okay. So I wasn't sure when everybody jumped in or not, but basically, I started in through the gen ed prism because that was just a more logistic way to actually engage and get a sense of what types of courses we offer. That's not to say that this is, a representative model across the way. So if I don't know of some courses that are transitioning between the natural sciences and the arts, for instance, then let's talk about this. But I'd like to see how this has actually landed, and maybe I could actually start with Erica and just see you know, where this is. And I know that a big part of, you know, the issues with certain departments are because there are very sequential courses that students have to take. And I'll just say that in the music department, we always follow your timetables so that students are then able to take the ensembles, and which is why we always rehearse at night. It really has to do with the sciences. So doing our part here. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I had a couple of thoughts as you were talking. The sequence of our majors is definitely a little bit more structured than others, which I think does impact any upper level classes that could potentially overlap that would require certain prerequisites. So they wouldn't make for a good gen ed. But I had a couple of thoughts that, you know, I could see going in a different direction. So one was a few years ago, we had an artist in residence here in our department who did a lot of the sort of figure building for researchers to visually represent their results, making graphical abstracts, but also things like textbook images and the technology needed to represent those complex topics. We had a ton of interest from students who enjoy art and also enjoy the science and were interested in sort of that connection. I also have a colleague who is doing a lot of 3D modeling and generating 3D protein models. And last semester, she needed undergraduates to help her paint them because she hand paints the different atoms, different colors. And so I asked my Foundations of Biology students, does anybody want to paint some models? And my inbox was flooded immediately with all these students saying, I love art and I love science and I would love to do anything that would connect the two. So those two things came to mind. And then the third thing that came to mind was a course that I think is being developed for the summer. I believe it's at Yellowstone between bio and geology that is designed to be a summer course. I don't know a whole lot about it, but I know it involves traveling there and learning about sort of the ecology and the geology of the region. And that got me thinking about the geographical region gen ed, where we're thinking about geographical region, not just about the culture and the people there, but also about the actual landscape and the environment. So I think there's a lot of room for growth where we're sort of connecting with other departments. I think it would rely on some collaborations. But yeah, those are my initial thoughts. If anyone wants to jump in.
Yeah, well, I don't know if there are any art historians in the room, but I could imagine, you know, the anatomy and just, you know, being aware of representation of the body in you know, hundreds of years of art. That would be something that art students might be interested in. So thank you for that idea. That's a really great thing that we could put forth. Yeah, Jeff.
Actually, Jake Deckent, the anatomy professor at the nursing school, and I, for years, taught a course on the history of anatomical representation. And, you know, that raises an issue, which is the difficulty of team teaching, right? That there are only a few venues for team teaching, and it's not that they haven't been generous to me or my projects, the Honors College, but that is a place in which, right, I can imagine all kinds of courses between sciences departments and potentially humanities departments that would, and the thing about this is, for them to be gen ed applicable, they should be durable things. They should be courses designed for their interdisciplinary nature that have that quality embedded in them from the beginning. They can't really be topics courses or courses that occasionally have that quality. So good time to start developing some interdepartmental relationships. But anytime you can encourage team teaching, interdisciplinary team teaching, you're doing some of this work.
Yeah. And actually, you know, it goes both ways, right? I mean, thinking about some of the other departments to be represented in the natural sciences as well, right? I mean, this is, you know, where that first slide was coming in. So I think that's a great idea. And the co-teaching is definitely a model that Dietrich is moving forward with. So it'll be interesting to see how this first cohort, what the results of that are. Thanks for that. Anybody else like Marcy?
Yeah, about team teaching, I think one barrier there is like, at least in the CBA, it says that like money to teach a course can just be split among two teachers, like, so the 7,500 minimum would be potentially split in half. That's the minimum required by the CPA. And I think that would be a challenge to people actually doing this, like how to, I don't think it's less work to team teach a course between humanities and sciences actually than it is to, just teach a course about music theory. For me, for instance, it'd be quite a bit more work. And so I think that would be one way that this work could really be supported, is either, if not changing the minimums in the CPA, at least, offering opportunities to pay full course value for it.
Mhm.
There is another way that can be dealt with, and that is to have a course that has multiple components. So one reason we broke that interdisciplinary course into seminar and lab was so that my colleague could be paid separately for the lab component.
Mm.
Isn't there an opportunity for that? I feel like that was advertised and they had a teaching slam that you could try to find people. I mean, I went to that teaching slam to try to find people to collaborate with, and I thought the idea was that each person would be paid fully for the class if you applied for this through this particular way to do it, and it was
Yeah.
approved.
Yeah, I think that's the full-time faculty have that opportunity to. Yeah, and I think Marcy, when you're talking about this, the per course, that's probably the part-time rate that you're referring to.
Yeah, it's for overloads and just, the idea that it might not count as a full 3 credits for a 3-credit course. Like, I'm not sure exactly how that would work. Yeah, for full-timers. But yeah, I think a lot of this might be part-timers, people with experience in different areas, too. So it's something to think about.
I just wanted to tell you, I mean, I did teach a class last semester. It was not between departments, it was within our department, Slavic department, but 3 people were teaching the class. It was a contemporary Eastern European culture class. So the 3 of us, and we all got 1 credit. So it was overload, 1 credit overload. So that was how it was developed, even though we all went to classes for all classes because we wanted to see what's going on or something, but we got an overload for 1 credit each of us.
So Liana, maybe I could follow up with you as a representative of languages here. Just if you could just give us a little bit more, because like I said, Slavic came up, French, German, Italian, everybody was coming up in the arts and also on the creative side. So if you can give us a little bit of an idea of what happens in these departments, and Amani as well.
Yeah, okay, maybe I don't know what to say, what is happening right now. I mean, with the languages, what we are going to do, how we are going, but I do know that we are going to do something, thinking what to do so we can increase our enrollment and, do something for our languages so we don't stay, like a little bit under enrolled or something like that. So currently, I know that in our department, several people received the Open Educational Resource Grant from the Provost Office. So we are trying to do a little bit more of online things for the languages, so students can study language not just in class. They can several supplements or sources that they can do it online. So that is what is currently, but it's not just in our Slavic department. I know that Italian department, French department, and they're doing that. Tom, can you jump in and see what else we are doing? Maybe I just don't want to forget something.
No, absolutely. It's basically it in part will determine. It will be our answer to this question will be determined by whether or not we get an exemption for the search we're currently performing, and whether we hire someone for it and who is hired for it, because the candidates have very different profiles, and that our path will change based on that partly. Part of it, as Lina points out, though, is yes, a question of adding new courses that also have gen eds, revamping the ones we currently have so they have more exciting, better gen eds, and also keeping our enrollment numbers high. To that end, Olga Klimova, our program director for the Russian side of things, and I are also put together what we hope are exciting events and classes that do rely on things like the Open Lab, for example, at Hillman, where if we're teaching a course on using geographical terms and describing direction in Russian, like move forward or left, or where is this continent located. We've been doing a decent number, one per semester at least, VR days, effectively, where students do activities and they're forced to put on goggles, and then one student watches the other and gives directions, and the other student attempts to find some Easter egg in a foreign city. And those have worked out great and have, honestly, I'm certain, helped retain our student base.
Yeah,
But the other thing is we can't
yeah.
turn away all we get so many STEM students in the popular gen ed classes who
Yes.
then see issues at work with, like, oh, well, maybe I could take more Russian classes or more Slavic classes, but then the major itself is sort of off the table,
Yeah.
obviously, because it's so intensive and long.
Yeah.
And to that end, there's been talk, at least, and it's at least a year out, but to attempt to do some sort of co-taught interdisciplinary sci-fi revamp of our popular undergrad sci-fi gen ed class that we offer once a semester, potentially co-taught, for example, with someone from physics who can respond to the Slavic representation of science and science fiction, but then in reality, for example.
Yeah.
But we do get a number of these STEM students, again, only really in our gen ed classes, or the one or two we get in our language classes, then can't, after a certain point, continue to take them because the
Yeah.
course
I mean,
load minimum requirements are so high.
we're also trying to, especially in our department now, we're trying to do something with our major. So maybe move a little bit toward something, I would say, more modern. So, and offer classes that connect more technology. And hopefully, I really hope that we are going in our new search, we are going to get someone who actually can teach some of the classes that could be very, very popular. So we are
Right.
very hoping for that. And
Like the dormant digital humanities class we have basically right now should be
yeah.
hopefully revamped by our new candidate for sure.
Yeah, so, and of course, every class that we're developing right now, we are really trying to connect it with STEM so we can get more and more students from STEM because they also need us. I say that I teach the Balkan culture class. I say to my students, it's not all about one field. You have to connect both fields in order to be very marketable because someone who is in science really needs to know how to write, how to do good email, good story, good, I don't know, paper or something. So I think that we need each other and we should just work on that to connect each other. So that's it.
Yeah, well, and you know, the sciences do offer writing classes, right? So you have, I know of one in bioscience, for instance, where they're writing research papers towards the end of their.
They don't get to that till they're seniors.
Yeah, I know.
So if they're writing like personal statements and cover letters and resumes, they get that somewhere else, for sure.
All right, and I had opened it to Amani and then to Leanne. Well, if you'd like to jump in.
Yeah, I'm really like, I think it's a really good step, the teaching slam that happened last semester, and I attended that and I proposed a course with someone in English film studies, which unfortunately did not get approved. But I heard lots of great ideas between biology and English. I remember one, I hope that one got approved, but also like in centers like in USIS, European Studies centers are trying to get professors, teachers from different departments work on joint courses. We're working on a course between Arabic and anthropology right now. And I think this is the way to go. And I'm also very curious to know what Jeffrey's course is about. Like, I really, really want to hear more about the English course that is offered in a lab.
That's fantastic. All right, so we'll turn to Leanne and then Jeff, if you want to answer that.
I just am thinking, and Drew, I am going to call on you here because Drew and I both did a very long stint on undergraduate council. Remember? Okay. So I'm thinking what I'm hearing, and I'm not in the sciences or the languages, but what I'm hearing is what students need and what we're able to provide. And we run into this structural limitation. We know students love these things. Like we know students love seeing people from different disciplines bring shared knowledge to the table. They love the different teaching styles, but we run up against the issues of, obviously, just listening to you all, the confusion about what our abilities are to team teach courses. I'm thinking of a very long, like honestly, it felt like a decade battle for the one course in one of the courses, I believe, Adriana, in the humanities that carries the natural science gen ed, which was gender and science. Drew, were you at the table for any of that? It was, it, never seen anything like it, because the people from the traditional natural science fields could not envision a world in which that course taught out of that department would meet the benchmark of what a natural science course should do. So it went through multiple revisions. It's a very popular course. You can't get into it until you're a senior, because for students who have to take 3 natural science gen eds, this is a great option for them. And part of the argument, part of the reason it got through was the idea that students will be taking 2 others. This isn't their only exposure to natural science. In the history department, some of our most popular classes are the history of healthcare and medicine, the history of healthcare controversies. Students come in droves from the STEM fields and the pre-med fields for this, but it's taught by a history faculty member who does have additional knowledge, but certainly not enough that she would pitch it as someone who can really meet the natural science gen ed. So what I hear is just tons of interest from students to take courses like this, tons of belief from us that it's necessary, but how to get the structural system in place that allows us to do this the right way without sort of kind of these machinations in our departments and figuring it out and all of that. I know I've heard of another case of team teaching workaround. You didn't hear it from me. I know we're recorded, of a course being offered at the same time from 2 different faculty, each having 15 students in it, but they meet in a room that holds 30 and they teach it together. So that seemed to be the way to get it on the books and get the course rolling without having to meet all of these, complicated rules, questions, and guidelines about how to actually team teach a course. It's like such a genuine, organic team teaching of a course, you know what I mean, on by their standards. So it seems like, for moving forward, it's our responsibility to offer these courses, and it'll be our challenge to figure out how to get these courses offered, and how to get gen eds applied from both sides in one course, that genuinely approach the material that way. So I'm not really adding anything useful. I'm just sort of summarizing what I'm hearing it and planting it in that long narrative, being at the table when these gen eds are trying to pass council. And there's a very narrow vision of what some of these disciplines are and what they're to do and how those are found and manifested in a course. So that was just what I was thinking.
Leanne, I'll just say that this is what I love. I will live to create a new structure. So this is, I'm just letting
I'm
all
with
of you know,
you. Yes, I agree. But yeah.
All we need to do is just figure out a bigger picture, because one of the things that I'm realizing is that the departments don't actually, so it's easier now already in the second year seeing all of these things flow back and forth between departments, but it's very hard. And just going back to my own experiences as a junior faculty, how difficult it was to actually understand how to create these connections and what the potential of some of these connections were. So I think this is where we'll definitely, it's not just working with the chairs, right? It's really where the synergy is. It's bottom up. And so how do we actually connect that to what we can actually do from the top? And how do we change the structure? Because sometimes it's really, like I said, we weren't getting students in our courses. We couldn't figure out what had happened. And then we realized that a biology lab had changed. And then we tweaked it for a half an hour, and all of a sudden we're back to 80 students in orchestra. So, but somebody had to go into that and just figure out that was the reason that we were not able to move forward. So thanks for all of these ideas. It's very exciting. Let's go back to Jeff and just see what actually happened in this lab, and then we'll go back to Liliana. But I know also that Leanne, you had asked Drew to comment on this. So let's do Jeff and then Drew.
So for years, I taught a course with Jake Deckant from the School of Nursing called Literature and Science, the Anatomy Lesson. And it was on the representation of the body, particularly like the anatomical body, the medical anatomical body from Vesalius on. So we had a kind of hermeneutic classroom portion where we looked at things like Rembrandt's anatomy lesson of Dr. Tulp, and we had an anatomy lab in which students learned medical anatomy in the nursing school anatomy lab. We haven't done it for a few years because at the moment, Pitt undergraduates are not allowed to work with cadavers anymore. But Jake has brought in all of this computerized dissection stuff, and we're just about ready to reoffer that now, looking at it from the perspective of doing digital dissection. But I would say it had the perennial problems of team teaching. It was difficult to get both of us paid. So the model we had was the English department paid me for 3 credits of seminar, and the honors college paid Jake for 1 credit of the lab. I think that there are better models to be made. That was kind of the stopgap that we were able to arrive at. I'm going to be teaching the class, but not with Jake in the Netherlands in the summer of 26 if the Global Experiences Office moves ahead with it. So it'll be taught again.
Okay. Jeff, are you talking about that digital anatomy table that was just brought in?
Anatomage, it's called. Yes, it's a digital anatomy table, which also has the ability to share to multiple iPads, and it's really quite amazing. Also, you can play air hockey on it in one mode. But yeah, and I am not, I haven't worked with Jake in the anatomy lab since they brought in Anatomage, and he's really, really excited about it. And so I wouldn't be surprised if we did literature and science in the next few years, and we're back in working with that resource. It's really cool.
Okay. Great. I'll also throw in PIMA tuning. So I don't know if anyone's aware of PIMA tuning. You know, they actually are able to house students. There's cabins out there. So we've been talking, I'm sorry, her name escapes me, but she is a specialist on frogs. And I happen to know frogs because frogs are recorded in music all the time. So Steve Feld. And so we had this very awesomely weird conversation from biology and music about frog sounds, but they are also willing to actually open up PIMA tuning for artists to collaborate. So, you know, we're talking about professors, but there's students that could have that synergy as well, you know, either working over a weekend or a longer period of time. So let's keep that in mind. Drew, let's hear from you and see what amazing projects and ideas.
I feel like I'm in some unbelievable like game at this point. I mean, there's a French opera called The Frogs, but I don't think that necessarily like Rameau, right? Anyway,
Rameau, yeah, that sounds
I'm
right.
so sorry also, Jeff, to hear that team teaching with a cadaver is off the table now. That's so bad. But Liliana has her hand up, so maybe let's make sure
Okay.
Liliana tells us about what she
That's
has.
okay, Joe. That's okay if you would like to talk more. But I just wanted to ask something. Since we are talking about connection between STEM and STEAM, so is it better? Since I told you that I am in the process of developing new class, the syllabus is almost done, but not big. I don't have time so much. So I would like to ask Adriana or Lian or somebody who was teaching the class this type. Is it better to do a class, let's say from Slav, and cross-listed that with some schools that we have science, or to do a team teaching? Because I am still, it is still possible to add someone for the team teaching. What do you suggest? What is better for actually for us, for everyone?
Oh, well, okay. So right now we're in this very financial odd moment. So why don't we actually just talk about that a little bit and let's look to see what potentials of enrollment are and what we can maybe do, and if you have somebody in mind.
Yeah, because the syllabus would be
that's a good question. What do you cross-listed? Is that enough, or do you?
Yeah, is it enough or not? Because you know, at this moment when I am doing the syllabus, like I'm still revising the syllabus, adding something, doing something. So I just would like to know if it's team teaching better, then I would probably leave the part of syllabus for someone who can teach with me from another school or something. If it's not, then I'll just finish it and cross-list it with the school, which again would be probably a good thing, I think. But that's okay. We can talk about that. It's just, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We
Thanks,
could
Adriana.
brainstorm for sure.
Liliana, can I ask you what other department would you cross-list it with?
It would be probably either maybe even both nursing school and public health. Yeah, probably something like that. But I'm working also with another colleague from the Slavic department, so we are working on that to incorporate. It's really very difficult, but it is working. It's coming out something like a culture and medicine. So, but it is working out, and I really love it. I need to tell you that. So I think it would be a very good thing.
So
I'm just going to mention one potential pitfall. I'm sorry, Adriana. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
Go ahead.
Is that all right?
Really?
But we've had this issue where we have considered cross-listing courses with other schools. And just to know that if you cross-list a course that's not a Team Talk course, they can teach that course at any time, right? With their faculty.
Yeah.
Which has been, right, Drew? Drew, are you noticing
yes, I'm
that?
here. I'm here. This was like you're handing off to me, and I was
No. So in other words, we've had this happen. We've cross-listed courses. Somebody's wanted to cross-list a course with public health, and then the next thing we know, our history course is being offered through public health because they've got the number too. So it's like you can cross-list courses, even though a department kind of technically has control over that course. Once it's cross-listed, anyone can teach it from that department as well. And that's not reliant on team teaching. That's reliant on a single professor in another department teaching it. So just to understand, that's one of the complexities of cross-listing structurally that gets a little messy. It's like you've given another department control of your course.
It's like the body snatchers.
Yes.
But this is where Andrew Lotz comes in. So Andrew and Adam Lee actually have put in documents that sort of help control these types of relationships with the schools, and especially Dietrich, as people borrow our courses and vice versa. So this might be actually something that we would just bring Andrew in and just to see public health and Spanish. I think there's a relationship there that's moving forward. So I think there is some precedent already in terms of what you're talking about. And I do know that public health, I think of the two schools that you mentioned, public health would be maybe the one that we'd want to engage with a little bit more.
Thanks.
At this point, they'd be open to it. Yeah. And I know, actually, it's just because I'm watching the time, I just want to make sure everybody has a chance to say something. So Jane, we haven't, I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you want to jump in, and then, we have Sudi here, Rosemary. So if any of you want to add anything at this point.
I actually just wanted to get some inspiration. I don't have, I have team taught and I have thought about team teaching with other departments, but making these kind of bigger bridges is something I'm interested in, but not really sure where it's going to go yet. I need to think about this and let it percolate a little bit. But I do want to say, Leanne, your suggestion is brilliant of how to get credit for team teaching between because that is kind of a big hurdle of getting anyone to even talk about doing it with you. So something else to think about. Thank you.
Yeah.
It might also be illegal, but anyway.
Well, I'm wondering how you got around the registrar that they were able to double book your room.
That it's just and I think anyway,
I mean, this is, I know that this is actually all doable. I think where we're at, and I'll just share my experiences talking to faculty, trying to get, for instance, the use of the discretionary funds in the undergraduate dean's office to work a little bit more as a synergy and as a connector between departments. And I'm actually finding that that's actually very difficult. I've asked numerous faculty, for instance, turn to somebody in your own department to create some kind of program that we can support, not just for your class, but for two classes. And I actually haven't gotten those types of submissions, let alone a submission between two departments. So I think this is just something that we can continue to do, not so much as resources get more tight, but just because this is the world we're in, right? There is absolutely no way that we can continue with these divided departments and consciously say that the students that are leaving our university have that kind of interdisciplinary experience, which is actually why those certificates are starting to become so popular. Like more and more certificates, right? Even I could just imagine, the art biology, I could just see that. I mean, it's just such a natural thing. You probably have those 6 courses, and Studio Arts probably has those courses already, maybe in our history course. And here we've got a new certificate. So, where are we actually able to then support this structurally, to create that interdisciplinarity? Because STEAM has never really gone away. It's always been. It's just that it hasn't been acknowledged that the arts and the humanistic approaches are part of the sciences and vice versa. All right. Sudi, would you like to add anything with your
Good afternoon.
interdisciplinary?
Yeah, this speaks my language. This is exciting and very close to my heart, and I fully support. I think what we are discussing today is the future of higher education. It's the future of work. It actually represents reality. Our students are graduating from economics, but they're not just going to work with economists. They're going to work with anthropologists and sociologists, and I think preparing them for working environments are amazing. I loved your slide, Adriana, the fusion of music and technology. I think that's
Yeah.
it's very powerful. But this is exciting. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Yeah.
Yeah, and Rosalind, I mean, on the graduate side too, because I think graduate work then, it impacts undergraduates, but also the undergraduates drive new graduate programs. So I think that synergy between us is also very important.
Yeah. Cross-disciplinary training is the key.
Yeah. Good.
I would
All right.
really love to have a course that includes Frankenstein and an anatomy class. I've always felt
Yes.
would be a really good part
Yeah.
of a course, at least Frankenstein anatomy.
Yeah, yeah.
Wouldn't it be wonderful? Or Gulliver's
Don't
Travel
ask.
and IT or technology.
Yeah, well,
We are not
definitely
teaching it.
horror studies that's developing on campus as well. Yeah.
That may be the
Amani.
direction of higher education overall in this climate. It is horror studies. God help us. There's been too much emphasis on this call about medicine. So I will take advantage of the opening to say that there are some other schools out there, and that architecture has been about STEAM since like the Renaissance. So you're correct, Adriana, that none of this is it's not new. It's an attitude maybe. And I think the one way to get around what Leanne was saying about cross-listing courses, and then the other school can take it over, is creating minors. And maybe your certificates work the same way, but we created a minor in design that was tailored to fit into the very rigorous requirements for the engineering school. And that is a really excellent bridge for bringing in folks from not just civil, but even mechanical engineering. I mean, these are like worlds apart, allegedly, from one another. They're not really. But the point is that what we have found is the kind of excitement that those students bring, because they choose it, right? They don't have to do it. If they're enjoying and wanting that experience, they bring an energy to their coursework and a different vision. And so, all that minor is open to everyone. It's not specific for engineering. We have students, I think, from 5 different schools, as well as arts and science, of course, who have enrolled in it. So thinking about structure, Adriana, I definitely register with what you're saying there. What are the right structures for ensuring that students are building up competency with, now we're getting to like multiple courses, but definitely a thing that I think helps to identify what it is that Pitt is bringing to the table when students are applying from high school.
Yeah.
And we're a very, very different proposition from most universities, I have found in my conversations with parents.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Erica, let's
I just want to add something here at the end that came to mind. So I'm currently teaching a microbiology class. And one of the reasons I love this course is because there are a lot of fun historical stories that relate to the biology that I'm teaching. But just this past week, I was teaching about Typhoid Mary, and I stopped mid-class and I said, I am sorry how obvious it is that I am not a historian, trying to explain what it was like in New York City in 1906, right? And so if any historian wants to collaborate, I think that that could be a really fun way to meld history and microbiology
Have
specifically.
I got an historian for you?
I'm
Wable,
looking at you.
Mary Wable, Leanne, who does history of infectious disease. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. Well, this is great. Like I said, we're in touch with the deans of the other undergraduate schools as well. It's great sharing that, for instance, in the engineering school, they're doing a study abroad to Prague. So we're going in there to talk to them about, what to expect. So I think, this type of synergy as we're coming back to campus, definitely ground up, bottom up, but also with an eye to how we can actually really create that conversation across the boundaries that have been in place for a long time. All right. So thank you everybody for joining in. I appreciate everything. We have one more of these. I think is Tim Tsang. I believe he's up in 2 weeks. He's got some fascinating data. He's been working on this actually all year, looking at what has happened to grades on campus. Oh, I think you know the answer to that. But he has 5 years of data to show us. So join in 2 weeks. And thank you everybody who's participated in these meetings throughout the year. This has been a really wonderful way to connect. And I wish everybody a great sunny day.